afternoon, or good evening, depending from where you're joining us today, and welcome to this virtual event on consumer collaboration in times of crisis. Joining us here today is Tom de Ruyck, Managing Partner, Keynote Speaker, and online research expert, who will give us an overview of the role of digital collaboration in these uncertain times. We also have Joeri van den Bergh, one of the founders of Insights Consulting, joining us. Joeri is next-gen and consumer trends expert, and he will share some exclusive first learnings from our proprietary COVID-19 consumer community we have been running over the past weeks. If you have any questions during the session, please use the question pane, which you can find at the right-hand side of your screen, and we will pick them up after the session. Without further ado, I would like to give the mic to Tom.
Thank you, Katja. Hi, hello. So, without stating something very difficult, I think we are living in very special times and very specific circumstances, I think. And in these specific times, more than ever, I think we want to be connected. We want to be connected with our family, with our friends. And although there is something like social distancing, we use, of course, digital tools and digital means to do that. More than ever, connectedness is an important thing, is an important aspect of our lives. And when it comes to brands, that's also what we expect from brands. We want them to check in on us. We want them to show and demonstrate that they care about us. We want them to keep on communicating with us. And at Insights Consulting, we actually listened not only to our clients on how they are doing in this specific circumstances, we also listened to our participants, to your consumers. And we did that through our COVID-19 community, a community of around 100 participants from around the globe that give us an insight into their lives. They tell us how they are feeling, what they are thinking, and how they are dealing with the very specific situation. From our clients, we learned that they want to understand how to react to the current situation from a what to research point of view. And for them, together with them, we created this three-step approach, this three-step model. Pause, play, and fast forward. I will now go over each of the different steps of this little framework, and Joeri van den Bergh, my fellow partner and consumer and marketing expert, will join me to give his take on the situation and to give you some insights live from our COVID-19 community. So first, we have Pause. Pause is all about checking in on your consumers. You connect with them and you check in on how are they doing? How are they feeling? You want to understand the new situation they are in. You want to understand their new behaviors, and you want to have a feeling of how you can be relevant in this new situation. This is also what one of our clients, Sony Pictures, did. On their ongoing community, TV Lab, they launched a couple of topics to understand more deeply what is it that consumers are going through, and especially when it comes to entertainment, what are their new habits, what are their new behaviors, and what are their new needs. So, Joeri, welcome. Welcome to the virtual event.
Thank you, Tom. How are you?
Doing fine, thanks. Well, Joeri, tell us a little bit from what we have observed on our COVID-19 community. What is changing in the lives of consumers? Can you tell us a little bit what's happening?
Well, Tom, it's funny you use the model, pause, play, fast forward, because of course they are also the buttons on a remote control. And what we learned from listening to our consumers in our online community is that remote is actually the new consumer reality today, with nearly half of the world's population living in some form of lockdown. And that means remote working, remote shopping, remote learning, remote studying, remote relaxing with online yoga sessions, and even remote relationships, as we saw in one of the quotes on the next slide of an Italian millennial saying the only difference is that I cannot go out. It's a big difference, but it's the only difference. But now I have time to spend and do my hobbies. I read a lot, I play with my cat, and every Saturday night I have a date on Skype with my boyfriend. So I guess that's bad news for the boyfriend, as he's currently being replaced by daily activities with the cat, and he's only welcome on Saturday nights. Now, when we look at the definition of the dictionary definition of remote, it also looks a bit outdated in these Corona crisis times, as it mentions situated far from the main center of population. That's often not the case. Often we're closer to each other while we are keeping our social distance, and having very little connection with, I think that's not the case either. And just when we all made 2020 resolutions to be less addicted to our phones, stop binge watching series, we are now using streaming services, online gaming, having more screen time connections with others than ever before, which is also seen on the next graph. The CEO of Zoom actually just announced that they went from 10 million daily users to 200 million daily users, not just to hang out or to have video conferences for work, but also 90,000 schools using it in 20 countries to conduct classes remotely. So the stock value of Zoom went ×4 compared to when it was launched last year. In the meantime, people are complaining they have Google Hangout hangovers or Skype meeting migraines.
So Joeri, very interesting. I'm wondering, are there any specific kind of frictions consumers have to deal with? New issues, new problems?
Yes, Tom. It's a bit ironic to use a picture from airports, which are currently the most desolated places in many countries, but it's also a good way of visually summarizing the new struggles that many consumers are experiencing for the moment. They have lost occupations, maybe because they're temporarily unemployed, or they lost time with friends and family. But on the other hand, they found new ways of dealing with time, like e-learning, bringing leisure activities online, digital date nights, like the Italian millennial was mentioning, but also online book reading clubs, pop quizzes brought online, birthday parties, dance raves, workouts, and even church masses went online as well. On the other hand, they're also revaluing offline moments, like moments in nature, and redefining pleasure. Walking and cycling are currently probably the only allowed activities besides gardening. So more outside, more back to nature. Retailers have reported a surge in sales of kitchen knives, luckily not to harm ourselves, well, in most cases, I hope, but by losing the bars and restaurants, places where we can get food, we actually rediscovered the pleasure of cooking and dining at home, which is also illustrated by the sales of bread baking yeast going up with 647% in the United States. It's also a revival of the so-called food porn on socials, and it's reinforcing the already existing do-it-yourself or do-it-together trend. Maybe not for health reasons or sustainability reasons this time, but often out of fear. We want to reduce the risk of getting infected by going for takeaway food, or out of necessity, with hairdressers closed, we are dyeing our hair ourselves because we have to. Some other things that I have lost is structure. With no daycare, no schools, no specific office hours. For some people, weekdays and weekends are merging. On the other hand, they refound parenting, they refound playing with kids, And food and drink moments currently provide more than usual a structure for our days, like having a beer or coffee online with peers or clients, or aperitivo moments with our friends and relatives. We are still in need for these daily rituals to fight our isolation or depression. Some frictions we also see popping up in the online community we're running for the moment. On one hand, we want to prepare healthy, fresh food because we want to give a boost for our immunity system. But on the other hand, we're very aware of shelf life of products because we want to limit the shopping frequency to avoid the risk of getting infected. Other frictions, we have lost freedom to travel, freedom to go where you want. And there's so many restrictions and limits that we are craving for indulgence. We're craving to self-reward ourselves with snacking, but we're also concerned about our health and about our weight. And the last one might be the newfound freedom and idle time for some versus the burden of cleaning your house yourself, preparing meals for the entire family, keeping the kids quiet, having video conferences with colleagues, and everyone knows you're there at home. You have no excuse to say, no, I cannot make it. So that's really giving a lot of stress to people as well.
I can imagine, Joeri, that a lot of the examples you just gave sound very familiar, and a lot of people can relate to them. Next, we have, after pause, we have play. And in play, it's all about how are you going to react as a brand? How are you going to react in an agile way to the new situation? How are you going to try to be and stay relevant, communicate in relevant ways, tweak your product, your service to the very specific and special circumstances? So, Joeri, I'm wondering from what you have heard of our consumers on the COVID-19 community, but also from what you have observed in the world of brands, how should brands react? And do you maybe have a couple of good examples of good reactions?
Well, Tom, I think brands at first should try to understand consumers in the new reality and try to help them. At the moment, consumers have different emotions, like it's a mix of fears for their own health, for the health of relatives, uncertainty, economic uncertainty, will I still have a job tomorrow, but also boredom and loneliness for some people. So supporting them in these challenging times in different ways, depending on the stage of fighting the coronavirus in different regions, is quite important. We can see some examples of what brands have done in the past weeks. And Coca-Cola, for instance, is supporting the most vulnerable by using their advertising budget around the globe to donate it to people who are actually the most in need. With one global message, we're in this together. So they decided to invest their marketing budget in helping people. Companies who still had access to alcohol, like liquor companies, beer companies like Heineken, for instance, but also Beiersdorf, L'Oreal, they started to use these ingredients to provide healthcare workers and hospitals with hand sanitizers, something that there was a shortage of. On the next slide, we see that some brands are also thinking of this parents with young kids at home because schools are closed. It puts extra pressure on the parents. So parents of young kids in Germany, for instance, they mentioned in the community that they like the Playmobil movie a lot, which explains with animated figures in very simple language, what is the virus all about? What does it mean for you as a kid? Wash your hands. Difficult concepts like social distance are explained in a child-friendly way. So yes, helping with homeschooling, with keeping kids entertained, that's also one of the strategies that brands are following. Audible, for instance, brought kids audiobooks for free in 6 different languages. And Toys R Us in Canada is offering home delivery of stay-at-home play packs at different prices and also for different passion points while also providing TikTok challenges, and YouTube content, because they understand on which platforms the kids are present for the moment, which ones they're using for the moment. And then there's, of course, Disney. With closed cinemas and theaters, they decided to release Frozen 2 3 months earlier than planned on their own Disney Plus platform. It's a new platform, and as mentioned, streaming services are really important for the moment, also for the kids, to keep the kids busy. On the next slide, there's the example of Nike. Nike was both asking people to stay inside and safe to help the world, actually, not just themselves, with a campaign with influencers like Ronaldo. But they're also offering the premium Nike Training Club app, which is normally a paid app, now for free. And it has nearly 200 workouts, yoga classes for all fitness levels. And they're also giving tips for nutrition, for sleep, for mental health, again, because they understand these are the struggles that consumers are having for the moment. And then on the next slide, some two last examples. A food waste app, Good to Go, opened up its platform for local businesses to offer takeaway services during the Corona crisis. And Burger King in France was doing this advertising in which they showed the ingredients you need to make a Whopper yourself at home, understanding the do-it-yourself and home cooking trend in the end.
Cool examples. We have seen that some brands were actually, like the ones you have used as an illustration, responding very quickly and rapidly to the Corona crisis. Some of them even started very early on playing with their logos to bring the social distancing in there. But others are still evaluating if and how they should react and how they can be relevant given the certain circumstances. Looking at what consumers shared on the COVID-19 community, what would be your very concrete advice to brands? What should they pay attention to?
Well, I think, Tom, I mean, most logos and brand names, we can put more social distance between the letters, but we should ask ourselves, is it really relevant to our target groups, to our customers, to our consumers at the moment in this crisis? And does it add value actually for them? So I would suggest choose wisely what you want to sustain, what you want to support. And this is a model actually that we are also using in our sustainability studies to choose which parts companies should invest in or social missions. But I think it's also relevant for choosing what to do right now. And the first thing is, why us? Demand yourself, is it aligned? Is it backed with the corporate strategy, the plans we have? Is there a very strong and clear link to the DNA of our brand, to our products? Is it clear for our customers, for our consumers as well? Do they see the match with us as a brand? Second thing is it relevant for them? Is it relevant for the, is it important for the markets that are important to you? The third one is, can we claim it as a brand? Can we be unique in this mission, in this message? Or at least can we be better than the others? Does it fit with our current communications? Does it fit with our normal tone of voice? Fourth one is, can it be engaging? Does it resonate with our own employees, with our workforce? Can they get involved as well in addressing in the mission and in becoming the ambassador? And the last one is it actually campaignable? And that means, is there a genuine public interest in the issue? Not just with our brand lovers, but with a general audience, perhaps even with government, who on the backside of supporting the economy and spending all the money, will have to count on brands taking up their societal role and investing in rising from the ashes. So if you look at this model, this is the reason why some brands, and you already see the example of L'Oreal, are explaining like a leader with a CEO as a leader, why they are doing what, why they are supporting people at first and communities, while other brands in the same industry, you could say, On the next slide, brands like Bleach London, which is a salon and hair dyeing product company, are rather choosing to help the customers with online hair parties and tutorials to dye their hair themselves at home in their own style, in their own tone of voice, but, and that's the next slide, still being clever enough to remove their corporate slogan, life's bleach, and then you dye, which might not be so appropriate for the moment, Tom.
Yeah, and I think the model that you shared with the 5 characteristics of a great mission and a great communication in these specific circumstances, Joeri, made me think of a very recent actually little project we did for Jacobs Douwe Egberts, one of our clients in the coffee and tea industry. And on their community called Take a Break, we did a quick check-in with consumers, with their target group for their Douwe Egberts brand on a new piece of communication they launched just recently. As you might know, Douwe Egberts as a brand is all around being together, spending great moments with one another, with family and friends. So they asked themselves the question, in times of social distancing, how can we communicate in a relevant way with consumers? And after checking in with consumers, the advertising agency came up with the idea of launching a platform where people could send in their little movies with messages for their family and friends that they could not see, that they could not be with for the moment. And every evening they pick one of those videos and they air them on TV instead of their usual ads. So it's literally the consumers taking the stage rather than the brand. So I thought this was a very nice example of what you just shared, Joeri. And then we are in the third phase. So we had pause, we had play, and then it's time for fast forward. And when we talk about fast forward, it's all about which of the current changes in behavior that consumers are having will become permanent. So how will, in the long run, this crisis change what consumers think, what they expect? So Joeri, I'm wondering, and I think everybody who is watching has that very same question: how will this change in the long run the expectations of consumers? Can you give us some hints?
Well, Tom, no one has a crystal ball, of course, and most macro environment trends that normally show the direction of how consumer trends evolve are now currently shaken up. So post-corona, I think the consumer will wake up in a different new world, and he will be more conscious, even perhaps cautious than ever before. All the environmental, economical, ethical, political, legal, socio-cultural, technological, demographical factors are changing for the moment. So what we can be sure of is that consumers had the time to reevaluate life and revalue some things, but also they might question certain things, relationships, as we saw with the statistics coming from China, but also their work, old habits. It normally takes people 28 days to change a habit. Well, most lockdowns are getting beyond that point. So there will be definitely some more attention for self-care as well, for happiness, well-being. We see today that people are already treating themselves with more sleep, taking a long hot bath, preparing meals for themselves that are healthy, reading books, doing more personal care. Some of them are not wearing makeup, but sometimes during weekends they take the time to have some more personal care. But then they come back to the reality, and it will be a harsh reality with, for some people, lost income and lost money, for many people, an economic slowdown and a recession. People are craving for the moment to get out of the limits they have to meet people in real life physically, to go out to bars, restaurants, concerts, exhibitions, picking up culture again, picking up team sports again. So social comes first. But at first, they will be very wary of getting infected or reinfected. So ironically, we will have a crowd of anaclophobics. Anaclophobics are actually people who are afraid of large groups of people. So we'll have a crowd afraid of crowds, you could say. When it comes to shopping, new customers, especially older ones, have been introduced to home delivery, to e-commerce. But for many newcomers, the first experience was often negative, with delays in delivery, websites not able to handle the traffic, time slots not available in the first weeks. So that might be a problem as well. On the other hand, they saw the advantage of less frequent shopping, more planned, scheduled shopping visits with a clear list instead of the typical last-minute store visit. So that might influence their shopping behavior as well, and it might be an extra challenge for impulse products, for instance. On the other hand, what we also see in our research is that people really hated it when they saw that their love brands went out of stock. And then we're not talking about toilet paper often, but they will be more aware of keeping a strategic stock for when this crisis happens again or another crisis happens again. So we will all become a bit more of a prepper, you could say. SOS, save our spendings. Will we be saving our spendings? We will definitely not be spending our savings. We learned how quickly wealth can be damaged by health. So this has an impact on different categories, like on insurances. We will definitely think of travel insurance. This has an impact on financial products. In the short term, we will think twice before spending. We currently see that consumers are postponing the more expensive items and the more difficult choices until they have more certainties about their employment and about the economy. Does that mean that all brands should go into a price war and give discounts? I don't think so, no, but definitely the consumer will be more price sensitive. And to decrease price elasticity, brands will have to show what is this added value, what is this expertise we can bring to the table rather than just giving you a discount. And then the last part is all about self-sustaining. People rediscovered gardening as a mindful activity, but we will also see a revival in growing on our own vegetables. The concept of self-sustaining communities might get accelerated, not just for ecological reasons this time, but also again to be ready for the next crisis. And then supporting locals. At first, well, we'll have a forced staycation. We are having forced staycations for the moment, but we will also revalue local farmers, smaller bakeries, butchers that were there for us during the crisis. And also, again, local, smaller bars and restaurants versus international change. I think we will have the tendency, most of us, to support our local economy, not for saving food miles and transport and the environment at first, but to help other people survive in this recession. Again, does that mean that big is bad? On the next slide, so do multinationals have a problem? Not really when they listen to what are the customer frictions, what are the consumer frictions, how can we spend our innovation budgets wisely in the coming years, what will make a difference to our consumers. Multinationals, they do have the power to create a better world. Some of them are already doing it right now by their actions, or at least they can create better services and better products that are more in line with the needs of the customer tomorrow after the corona crisis.
Thanks, Joeri. Thanks a lot for your thoughts and sharing these first insights coming from our COVID-19 community. We see you back during the Q&A at the end of this virtual event. Thank you. So, if one thing has become clear, I think, from what Joeri just shared, is that silence is not an option. It's not an option for brands to not listen to consumers, to not communicate to consumers, and to not react to the current situation. As Robert Kelly once said, sometimes silence can seem so loud, and that's definitely the case right now. By the way, Robert Kelly is the professor that became world famous a couple of years ago because he was giving a live interview on BBC from his home office, and all of a sudden, two of his kids walked in, followed by his wife, who tried to take out the kids out of the room again. And I can imagine that some of you maybe have had their very own Robert Kelly moment over the past couple of weeks. So if we listen to our COVID-19 community participants, to your consumers, they say actually that in this day and age, it's very important to keep on doing market research. They want you to check in on them, to understand their current reality, and also to take action, to try to be relevant, and to try to fulfill their new needs and probably also their future needs. They even state that today it's probably more important than ever before to do research. So we already know what we can research, in the sense that brands need to pause, play, and fast forward. They need to understand the current situation. They need to understand how they can react in an agile way to the current situation. And gradually, we will learn also what of the current behavior will stick around and will have an impact in the long term on what consumers expect from brands. But when it comes to how we do research, I think there is something very specific to this situation. We are forced to go online. And most of you, of course, will already have experiences with online research, but today everything needs to happen online. There is a clear need for digital collaboration, both with consumers and with employees, with our colleagues, because we not only need to gather the new insights, we also need to diffuse the insights within the organization and, of course, take action upon it. I will now focus for the rest of this event on digital consumer collaboration, but next week we have an event on digital employee collaboration. So feel free to subscribe also for that one. I will also focus on digital qualitative research, because I think digital quant is very mainstream right now. And in this particular situation, if you want to pause, play, and fast forward as a brand, it's especially qualitative and also ethnographic research that you need. So what are the specific elements or the specific characteristics and benefits of online qualitative research? Let's quickly go over them. Well, first of all, I think it's about convenience. Nobody has to travel to a central location. So it's very convenient for all stakeholders, for all actors involved. Secondly, it's not only about the fact that it's convenient, it's also about the fact that a lot of the hidden costs you normally have are not there anymore. You don't need to pay rent for that central location. There are no travel costs, of course. And last but not least, there is no catering cost. But that being said, what it's probably about is not about the convenience and the cost savings necessarily. I think it's about better research. It's about gaining better insights through digital qual and ethnography. Couple of examples why it could be better. First of all, there is anonymity. People participate from the comfort of their own house, the comfort of their own home, like where you are right now. And we have seen that those two aspects, anonymity and feeling safe and comfortable, make that people will share more. we have done one-on-one comparisons between offline qualitative research and online qualitative research, and we clearly saw that there is an effect of anonymity on how much people share, how open they are. We also see that there is less group pressure and less social desirable answering, which is good news, of course. Apart from that, a key advantage, I think, of digital qual is the fact that there are no geographical boundaries anymore. That means that you can involve a diverse group of people and that you can involve consumers from all across the country. Not only people living in the bigger cities that we typically have when we do traditional qualitative sessions. And especially right now, I think that's very important that you have people from urban areas and from rural areas, because the particular situation in Corona times for somebody living on the countryside versus somebody living in a bigger city or even in a big city will be totally different. It will be a different kind of reality. So then finally, it's also about speed, which is also very important, because in today's situation, it's important that you can react in an agile way to what's happening. So digital research will allow you to set up things quicker, or it sometimes is already there in the sense that you have already a platform on which there are participants available. So let's now go over the options that you have when talking about digital qual. First of all, we have the situation where you copy paste the physical experience to a digital environment. I'm talking here about in-depth interviews and focus groups. You just take them almost literally online and you try to grasp and leverage the advantages of online that I just described. Here you can choose for video interviews, which is of course very handy when you have an in-depth interview, but you can also use video when you do a small focus group of 4 to 6 people. We keep the group a little bit smaller than usual, and we also recommend it for topics that are that need a little bit more in-depth. You want to explore a little bit more, you want people to tell their stories and they can listen to each other and then react to each other. They cannot talk all at the same time, so it's less interesting to use this for quick testing or quick evaluation. Then we have the second option, and that's when we move from video-based to text-based. So people are not going to talk using audio and video, they're going to chat as well as the moderator. The big advantage of chat is, especially when you test, for example, a piece of communication like the example you see on the screen, that people can give all at the same time their very first spontaneous reactions to what they see, which makes that there is no group reasoning, which makes that it's very spontaneous. It's the kind of instant reaction that you then capture that people also have when they see a piece of communication or a new product, for example, for the very first time. So it's very natural. But after that, of course, the moderator can build in a moment where he or she is probing and going in depth on some of the aspects that were mentioned. So you have faster moments where everybody talks at the same time, and you have slower moments where the moderator is guiding, let's say, the discussion. So that's a copy paste of what we know from the offline world to the online world. But you, of course, can go one step further, and that's when we come into the world of research communities. I tend to call research communities focus groups on steroids, because we are not only grasping the advantages of digital that we just described and that we just saw at work in the first two options. No, we also add two powerful characteristics, which is more people and more time with those people. And that is what makes that a community is so special. On a community, we have a mixture, of course, of synchronous moments, which could be an in-depth interview or a digital focus groups, and asynchronous moments, where we are going to have discussions on the forum of the bulletin board of the community with consumers. Of course, we can also throw in quick polls and quick surveys, and not to forget ethnographic tasks, where we use the mobile device as a auto ethnography device. And I will come back to that in a second. But you see, it's a rich mixture of different tools that we have available to get the most out of our interaction with consumers. Let me zoom in for a moment on more people and more time and what that does to your research, how that is delivering you new powers, better insights at the end of the road. More people is all about diversity, about having all the different opinions that are out there in your target group and making sure that they come to the table. And we all know that in qualitative research, good discussions lead to very good observations that later on we can turn into insights. So that's more people. It's about richness. Then more time with those people. It has actually three benefits. The first one is that we can follow how consumers think while a situation is unfolding, which is of course very interesting in Corona times, because the situation is evolving by the week, in some countries even almost every single day. We can follow that. We have that constant finger on the pulse. Secondly, we are doing research with consumers in different moments, asking them different questions about different topics, which is giving us a 360-degree holistic view on consumers and their reality and their thinking. And then last but not least, probably the most important aspect when we think not about pause, but when we think about the play phase of the model that we shared in the first part of this event, we want to react in an agile way. We not only want to understand their situation, we also want to take action. And we want to do that together with consumers while co-creating, while collaborating. So it's that iteration. You learn something, you're going to craft an idea internally, you're going to throw it back to consumers, you're going to have feedback, and together with consumers, while iterating, you make it better. So that are the advantages of more people and more time. And of course, we leverage the advantages of digital as well, and we make use of the mixture of different quant, qual, ethnography, synchronous and asynchronous tools to get the most out of this interaction. I want to highlight the ethnographic capability of a community. The fact that it has also a mobile site, that people can, through an app, literally show to us their lives, that we have videos, that we have pictures, that we can almost be there real time when people are experiencing something. I think especially in COVID-19 times, this can come in very handy because the situation is totally new and we want to feel it. We as marketing people, innovators, we want to really deeply understand what is going on, and having video and images to that can come in very handy, of course. As you see on this slide, because this is input from our COVID-19 community that we are running ourselves to understand the situation, you can see that we can literally be there when people are experiencing something, and that they use a lot of imagery to explain their emotions. And another example is this one from a community for Ontex, and Ontex is a producer of diapers. And we literally could have a view into the lives of young moms and dads, and how they were dealing with the situation of having a newborn, and all the specifics of course that come with changing diapers. And you see in the pictures that we can get really close to the real situation, because what you see on the right of the screen is what you think it is. So it shows that we can really be there with consumers when the important things are happening. A final example that I want to share with you is from Chiquita, a community we did a while ago to help Chiquita understand how they could launch their smoothie offering to the European market. Because most of you will know, but Chiquita is a fruit and smoothie company. This example, this case, actually illustrates very well what the special powers are of a community. It demonstrates very well how through a community, short-term or long-term, you can actually discover things that no traditional methodology allows you to find. So what happened? They wanted to launch their smoothie offering onto the European market, and the advertising agency said, well, we want to do this by making use of the physical and mental benefits that consumers perceive when eating, or in this case, drinking fruit. That's how we want to convince people, people also that are not yet having fruit as an important part of their daily diet, to convince them that drinking a smoothie, drinking a Chiquita smoothie would be a convenient alternative to have their daily fruit intake. So in order to find those physical and mental benefits of eating fruit, we started a community of a month with 50 participants, because that's what we do. We keep those communities that we use for qualitative research quite small, between 50 and 150 participants, depending on the duration, but also depending on the diversity of the target group. And even on those long-term communities, when we have also quantitative research that we do on it, we will keep our groups that we do qual research or ethnographic research with quite small, always between 50 and 150, because that's what keeps it efficient, but that's also only what's needed. And also from a kind of trust perspective, creation of community perspective, ease of moderation perspective, that's what we need. So a small community, in this case, was an ad hoc small community of 50 people. 50 people, 25 living already a healthy lifestyle in which there was a lot of fruit, and 25 not so healthy lifestyle consumers, in the sense that fruit was not really an important part of their diet yet. So interesting mixture. In the first week, we just discussed what is the role of eating fruit. Do you perceive in a healthy lifestyle? So it's your typical kind of focus group discussion, I would say. But I think it became more interesting in the second and the third week, because in the second and the third week, we did a very specific experiment that we may call a activation deprivation exercise. And what does that mean? Well, it means that in order to understand what the role is of something specific in people's lives, you take it away if they already have it, or you give it to them if they don't have it yet. You can do that with your teenagers or screenagers. Take away their screens and see what happens, and then you will understand, or they will understand, how important that is in their lives. Maybe they will be like, oh, I didn't know that it was so important to me. Maybe it makes them think about things. But also in this specific situation that we're in right now, it's almost one big activation deprivation exercise. We're all deprived from some of the things we are used to. So it's a very relevant example, I think. So here we were taking away fruit from people that were eating already a lot of fruit, and we were sending people who were not doing it yet baskets full of fruit and smoothies. And during the 2-week period, we asked them to keep a qualitative and ethnographic diary. So they had to send in pictures and videos around how they were feeling. And also 3 times a day on their mobile device, they received a quick survey where we were checking in the morning, over lunch, and in the evening on how they were doing in terms of their energy levels, both their physical and their mental energy levels. Based on all of that rich information, we were able to craft, based on all the observations of week 1, 2, and 3, 20 benefits, mental and physical benefits of eating/drinking fruit. And then, of course, the people at Chiquita and the advertising agency, they were wondering which of those 20 are now the killer arguments that we need to play with, that need to use in communication. In order to understand that and to find that out, what we did in the final week, week 4, is we organized a battle of arguments. What does that mean? The 25 people who were already convinced that eating fruit is an important part of a healthy lifestyle were asked to try to convince the 25 others, the not so healthy ones, let's call them like that, not eating fruit already as part of their usual habits. And the only arguments they could use to convince the others were actually the 20 we found. So it's almost like real life testing which arguments are credible, which arguments are easy to understand, which arguments stick for a very long time. And based on that, we picked the 2 arguments that were used in above and below the line communication. So I think this example is a really nice one because it shows the value of having time with people. This shows the value of having that diverse group, of having more people and richer opinions. And I think it's a nice one because almost one-on-one you can translate it to the current situation we are in. So I think when it comes to what we should research, I think it's clear. You should pause, you should play, and you should fast forward. You should understand the current situation. You should try to react on the current situation and try to be relevant as a brand in the current situation. And of course, you want to be among the first to understand how all of this will change consumer expectations in the near future. Because when we have beaten the virus, like Joeri said, we will wake up in a new reality. From a how we do research perspective, I think there is an opportunity in this crisis. If you look at the word crisis in Chinese that you see on the screen, you see that it consists out of 2 characters. And the first is signifying danger, but the second one talks or means opportunity. And I think there is also an opportunity in this crisis. This is an opportunity for researchers to demonstrate their value, their importance within a company. There is an opportunity to also discover all the aspects of online research and online collaboration, both internally and externally with consumers, and to discover some of the things you maybe were not aware of, and to discover how powerful digital research can be. So that's the note I want to end on. See the opportunity in this crisis and see the opportunity to strengthen, let's say, your research toolkit. So I want to give the word now back to Katja, because I'm sure that you have quite some questions, and Joeri and myself are very happy to answer them.
Indeed. So if there are any questions, you can always post them in the question pane. We do have some questions already coming in. Joeri, perhaps a question for you, considering some of the insights and learnings from the COVID community. Do we see people caring more for health in the future? If we're looking at maybe more prevention, but also in areas such as retail, are there any indications of a more cautious consumer, and will this impact also a new standard in store navigations, in how we check out and how we also buy, you could say, as a consumer?
Yes, Katja, I think what we are already witnessing today with our consumers in the online community is that some are, all of them are concerned about their health, of course, during this crisis. Some are boosting the immunity system by drinking green tea. Tom talked a lot about fruit and smoothies, by drinking smoothies, by replacing unhealthy snacks with fruits. People are more extensively walking or running. Mental health becomes more important for the moment in being in isolation. So yoga and Zumba classes, more time for hobbies. And people are, of course, washing their hands and putting more attention to hygiene than ever before. Now, this is during the crisis. The question is, will that last after the crisis? I think some say we will never give hands again and only give elbows. Personally, I don't really believe it, and I hope we won't do that. But I think some new habits will last, like trying to boost our immunity system, doing the walks, taking back the time with families and friends that we lost. It's being more valued for our mental health as well. And when it comes to shopping, as you mentioned, I think at first, for sure, we will be more cautious. And we already see today that people are buying wrapped products again instead of bulk products. So even when it comes to fruits and vegetables, because they want to protect their health. So at the moment where we were all questioning and all retailers were removing plastic packaging for the fruits and vegetables department, now we see consumers are demanding it back, and they do know that it's bad for the environment. But at this moment, first comes their own health. If that's an answer.
Yes, definitely. And maybe also linked to that, we talked about health, but also the financial behavior. Before you mentioned tapping into savings, this uncertainty. Do you see, is there a preference for different payment methods and the role of, or at least the relationship with banks, and also looking post-COVID times, do you think this the lockdown will increase consumer demand for cheaper prices regarding things like mobile data and the internet, because we're feeling like this is now part of a routine and a habit and the current behavior?
Yeah, these are two different questions. I think to start with the latter, they will be more price sensitive. On the other hand, they're also valuing the video calling for the moment, so they will be more prone to be the first adapters of 5G, for instance, because at the moment they discovered streaming, they see how it can play an important role in their lives, but they will be price sensitive for sure. When it comes to their worries on the financial side, we see that some of them are worried about unemployment. They see a drop in interest rates. They see their investments that have lost value with the stock market plunge. They see country debts, which will have an impact on taxes. So what does it mean for their expectations from banks? They want to see delays in repayment of loans. They want loans at lower rates even. Not becoming more expensive. Some even mention that they do not see how a bank is going to help them. In the future, they will definitely be more cautious when it comes to spending, especially when it comes to buying luxury items like jewelry. They will be more prone to save money and watch what will happen. And also when it comes to investments, I think they will invest in things that will keep their value. So real estate will become more important again compared to shares and the stock market. And when we look at insurances, we only see that they talk about travel insurance and hospital health insurance for the moment, not for other parts, because they expect that the price of a life insurance might rise because of this type of risks. And some are also displaying some distrust in insurance companies in general when it comes to certain exceptions for repayments, etc. That's what we learned from our community.
Okay, maybe, yeah, we're in the midst of everything. I assume your research is ongoing. Can we expect more soon? Any content pieces you're working on based on these learnings?
Sure. So the community, it's still running. We're still analyzing it. We are also saying what will be the impact on environmental thinking. Like just before the crisis, we had Greta Thunberg and sustainability on the #1 agenda of most companies. How will this be affected by the new situation, for instance, is one of the topics. But we also want to dive into regional differences and differences between generations. When we look, for instance, at the youngest generation, Generation Z or Z, at first they were the ones who thought, oh, we're invincible. We are the ones who won't be affected by the virus because it's older people that are dying, until suddenly we saw that's not the case. And then going from lockdown parties and still having fun at spring break, suddenly they realized it will also impact their lives. And many of them already lost their student jobs working in restaurants and bars, so they also see the financial consequences. So we will want to dive deeper into generational differences as well, as this is typically one of my personal passion points too.
Great. Maybe a question for Tom before we end. Tom, there came a question asking on how can you use an online community also for FMCG products? For example, candy, to know what consumers, what they find of packaging, taste, and how it's placed in the supermarkets.
Yeah, of course. I think especially right now, given the fact that we all, I think, pay more attention to what we buy in supermarkets and how it's being packed and stuff like that. I think more than ever, it's important to do research around FMCG products for sure, and the community can definitely help. Specifically, maybe you want to understand what is the specific behavior that consumers are having, what are their routines and habits, for example, when it comes to candy, what is the role that candy plays now in their lives. Probably that is different right now than before. I can imagine that some people that were maybe a little bit more health conscious right now want to treat themselves, like Joeri explained. I think the whole situation has changed. So you can use the community first of all to pause and to understand the new situation, and then talking about packaging, talking about specific tweaks. I think that's a nice example of play, agile reaction to what you have learned, and then fast forward. Maybe some of these packaging aspects will stick around, like Joeri just mentioned. Maybe we will be more conscious when we think about how things are packed, and maybe the bulk goods that were so trending, or buying goods in bulk that was so trending, will be gone forever. Who will tell? So I think one recommendation to brands that I have is check in on your consumers. Right now, it's more important than ever to have that constant finger on the pulse, to be able to pause, play, and fast forward. And communities are probably the methodology that can help you with that, because the situation evolves constantly. The situation evolves every single day, and I would even say you need a very diverse group of people so that everyone can give their thoughts, can give their opinion. And probably if you are a country that is active in multiple countries, you also need to be able to have a finger on the pulse in multiple countries, given the fact that the situation is rather or slightly different depending on the region in the world that you are living in. And communities, I think, are very relevant as a methodology, probably the most relevant one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, if there are any other questions, please do not hesitate to post them. We can pick them up also one-on-one by email. Because of time reasons, we have to end here. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Next up is next week. We're talking about employee collaboration. So it's not only about collaborating with consumers, but also how to take the insights from consumer collaboration further in a digital environment, especially considering remote working. What does this mean for workshops, brainstorms? And then the April 30th, we're going to talk about creative collaboration, infusing creative crowdsourcing online to really tap into those new insights and fast forward, you could say, in terms of innovation, communication to the future, what this can mean for your brand to stay relevant. We hope to join you in one of these sessions. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can always reach us at marketing@insights-consulting.com or Tom at insights-consulting.com, or even Joeri at insights-consulting.com. Thank you again for joining us, and wishing you a warm and healthy day, evening, or morning.